Moin YouTube. It's time for another day trip, and today I'm visiting a city I actually used to live in over 30 years ago, just to see if anything there still seems familiar to me. Let's jump on a train. On this mid-October Sunday, I'm revisiting the city of Kiel. The northernmost state capital of Germany has been home to me for a year in the early 90s. It has a population of about 250,000 people, and it sits right at the Kiel Fjord, a fjord that connects it to the Baltic Sea. What I want to know is what parts are still like I remember them, and what changes do I notice. Of course I go where the boats are. Now, I can't be sure about every single building here, but I think most of this wasn't there when I lived here. Most of this area here has been reconstructed, built in the 90s, finished in 98, and I left the city in 92, so I haven't seen most of this before, but is it pretty? Well, not overly. In fact, much of Kiel isn't super pretty because Kiel really doesn't have an old town. 80% of Kiel, way more than 80% of Kiel have been destroyed during World War II. So the whole town is pretty much post World War II reconstruction. There are a few buildings from the beginning of the 20th century, but that's about that. However, Kiel has always had a certain gritty charm to me, so let's see how much of that is left. So I just found out that the ferries that tour the Kiel Fjord are part of public transit, and the Deutschlandticket is actually valid on them. So I just hopped on and will ride this ferry to the next stop. The Color Line ferries connect Kiel to Oslo. They are ferries, but they are so well equipped they almost feel like cruise ships. I've been on that ride once. And the Stena ferries connect Kiel to Göteborg. I've also taken that ride once in the late 80s, and I'm not sure, but it might even be the same ship. I don't know. And as you can see, cruise ships also start their journeys from here, from Kiel. So that was actually a very nice ferry ride, and even though I got off at the next stop, really enjoyed it. I'm not sure that ferry was operating back then when I lived here. All I know is I never took one of those ferries before. Kiel, which sits right at the so-called Kieler Fjord, like the Kiel Fjord, which is part of the Baltic Sea. Of course, Kiel has always been a city that has been very much defined by its location right next to the sea. However, I feel that Kiel, the maritime vibes that are here now are stronger than before. Like, they are aware of their prime location and they're trying to make the most of it. I don't know if it's true or if I'm just more receptive to that these days, but I like it. I've mentioned before that Kiel was heavily, almost completely destroyed during World War II, and the reason for that was this city had a major base for the German Navy and also various shipyards. So, of course, that was attacked very soon, very early in the bombing war during World War II. So all of Kiel is post-war rebuilding, and in those times they didn't construct with architectural style in mind. What they had in mind is cost efficiency and construction speed. So considering that, I think that they didn't do so bad. This is Holstenstraße, Kiel's main pedestrian zone, and I'm sure it's changed, but I'm not seeing it. I remember it exactly like this, just a very functional 1950s shopping street with 1950s functional buildings and not much else. What's definitely new is this painted blue line that runs through all of the city, guiding cruise passengers around. I'm quite confident that this guy here was already here when I lived here. Asmus Bremer, mayor of Kiel in the early 1700s. Not everything was better in the old days. For example, you couldn't get bubble tea. So this building here, Nikolai Church, right behind me, is actually the oldest building in all of Kiel. It was originally constructed in the 1200s, around the time the city was founded. However, it's undergone major changes over the centuries. The old facade was replaced by this brick Gothic facade we see today, and also in World War II, the church was heavily damaged, almost destroyed, and then after World War II, completely rebuilt. So it doesn't look like the original anymore, but it's still here. So I'm walking up a street called Bergstraße to an intersection called Dreiecksplatz. triangular square, if you want, because that is where a lot of the clubs, well, the two main clubs that I went to were. So let's see what's left of that. There are still clubs there, and the entrance still is the same, but it's different clubs now. Back then, in the early 90s, there were 3 clubs behind that entrance. One was called Hinterhof, which means backyard, and they were mostly classic rock oriented. They played like Led Zeppelin and Mother's Finest and Richie Havens and stuff. In the basement was a club called Subway. That one was heavily punk rock oriented, and then there was another one we never went to. I think the name was Flea Market. We never went there. And today they have Böll and Tucholsky, so authors. So that place in the early 90s was a döner restaurant, and now it's a different döner restaurant. Okay, this street, Holtenauer Straße, has changed a lot since I lived here. Back then it was just a major thoroughfare for cars into the city, and there was no reason to walk here really, and that has really changed, and apparently that was a deliberate effort by the city to make the street more walkable and more enjoyable, and it's still not ideal, but a lot better than it used to be. Also, the city apparently has plans to reintroduce a tram system that's supposed to run along this road, among other places, and that would certainly make the whole street even more enjoyable. Another positive change I'm noticing, there are way more bike lanes now. Back then, cycling in Kiel was no fun. Now that's a city that has been heavily affected by World War II. Right there you have old buildings from before the war right next to much newer ones, so you can see it was just a game of luck really if your house was still standing after a bombing raid or not. Park. I was here a lot during summer, and I don't think it has changed at all. It still looks the same. Trees might be a bit taller. That's the natural flow of things, but other than that, the geese and ducks still love to conquer every bit of the grassy areas when there are no people there. But in summer, with temperatures above 20 or 25 degrees, this was packed with people. The university isn't that far away, so students would come here a lot. And generally, just Kiel's youth and young adults would conquer this place during summer. Juggling was a huge thing back then. That's the street right next to the park, and as you can see, a lot more buildings have survived the bombing raids of World War II there. which kind of makes sense because naturally parks aren't targets during those campaigns. So if you live next to one, you have a greater chance to not be hit. You know, one thing that has always been said about Kiel is, well, the surrounding countryside is nice, which translates to the city itself is not. And that may have been true for a very long time, but I can see a lot of change for the better. So one place that hasn't changed at all is Exerzierplatz, or just Exa for short. And unfortunately, it's still the same as 35 years ago. It's just a huge square in central Kiel. Look around. It's large. And twice a week it gets used for a farmer's market, but the rest of the week it's just public parking. And just imagine what you could do with a square like this. I mean, you put a few pavilions up, have some cafés move in, or pubs and bars, and use the square for outdoor dining, whatever. I mean, you could do a lot with this, and most of it would be better than just put cars here, I think. If you're from Kiel, let me know what you think in the comments. Also in the 1400s, this is where the gallows was. We are back at the fjord. This is called the Kiel Linie, which is like the major waterfront promenade of the city. And one thing hasn't changed at all in the last decades. There's not too much hospitality business going on here. I mean, at many other places like this, there would be shop next to restaurant next to bar the whole way. And they're not doing that here, which I like. But there is this place, and you know I can't resist. Okay, this dock is where you can get your food and your drinks, and it's really nice here. There's one last place I want to go today, and it's a bit further away, so I'm not walking there just for time reasons. Instead, I'm using this thing. I'm afraid I don't have my handlebar camera rig with me, so I cannot show you the ride itself, but I can still stop for views like this. Yeah, so this is where the North Canal, internationally known as Kiel Canal, ends. It connects the North Sea with the Baltic Sea, and it's the busiest artificial waterway in the world. Okay, I am on the southern side of the canal because I can't take that e-scooter to the other side. So now I'm trying to get as close to the lock as I can. Let's see how that goes. Okay, there is a viewing platform. Admission fee is 150. I bought a ticket. So this canal was built between 1887 and 1895, and back then it was an absolute engineering miracle, really. In 2023, more than 26,000 vessels passed through the canal, making it the busiest artificial waterway in the world. By the way, private boats pay 12 euros for the passage, and large container ships, like the one in the background, they pay 25,000 euros. Okay, it's 4 in the afternoon, and I think it's time to start my journey home. So I'm back at Central Station, and yeah, final thoughts about my return to Kiel. It still is not the prettiest town in Germany. It doesn't have any historic buildings or architectural grandeur or many postcard views. But I remember I really liked living here a long time ago, and I still would. As I said, also, the changes I have seen, most of them have been for the better. But one thing hasn't changed. Kiel isn't a postcard, it's an authentic, lived-in and breathing city that offers a lot of opportunities to have a good time and to enjoy life here. So, did I enjoy coming back? Absolutely. I remember I liked it when I lived here, and I still do. Anyway, thanks for coming along today. I hope I will see you for my next video again. Until then, be well and have a lovely time.